Please help us prevent log cabins being erected on land next to Manchester Lane, Hartshorne. This is Hartshorne in South Derbyshire. A quiet, rural village with no tourist attractions, not even a shop. This is the Bull's Head. And this is Manchester Lane. This is the proposed site for the cabins. A piece of historic glebe land on the eastern slopes of Horn Hill, from where Hartshorne gets its name. And these are our properties, the local residents. The developer, a parish councillor for the nearby village of Melbourne, applied for planning permission to erect 4 log cabins for holiday accommodation in 2017, but was refused. However, he has resubmitted the plans hoping he can get the decision overturned at the next council meeting. Should he achieve that, that's it. There is no appeal procedure for any objectors. The residents, the parish council, and the village association have many reasons why they wish to object to the plan. These include an alien development pattern, an unwarranted intrusion into the landscape and countryside, loss of historic landscape, antisocial behavior, noise, sewage and drainage issues, loss of residents' amenity, security and theft issues, lack of on-site management, and danger to holidaymakers. The reasons the council gave for refusing the plans in 2017 still hold true now and should be rejected again and again as necessary. The Residents' Association considers Horn Hill and its surrounding landscape to have historic value and have stated that the landscape should be protected. To that end, a dossier was handed over to the Council's Conservation Officer in 2017 for them to carry out a conservation appraisal of Horn Hill and its surrounding area. If the appraisal concludes that the area warrants protection, then it would certainly be short-sighted to introduce log cabins into the landscape at this moment in time. The site is conflictingly located on the eastern slope of Horn Hill, whereas the ribbon of residential houses are all on the western side of the slope along Manchester Lane itself. The eastern landscape is currently completely open with undulating fields of crops. Not only is the site behind the existing building line, but the cabins will constitute an unwarranted invasion onto the eastern slope and its landscape. The residential buildings are each constructed of brick and tile. A group of prefabricated log cabins located amongst residential houses will jar badly with the building ethos and appearance of the area. The developers plan to erect 4 log cabins as holiday accommodation. Is a cynical use of bad legislation instigated by the National Forest that enables the development of holiday accommodation on sites where residential development would not be permitted. The National Forest Company itself admits it owns very little land and does not own any of the visitor centres or attractions. Nearly all the woodland is in the ownership of private and public sector landowners, where there is no public right of access. When you drive into the so-called National Forest, the first thing you notice is a lack of any forest. The amount of land available for the planting of more trees is reducing each year. And the grants that pay the landowners to plant and maintain the trees is no longer attractive enough to entice them to do so. The unwritten assumption is that the lettings will be for like-minded people with a love of the countryside and walking, well-behaved and possibly from rambling or associated clubs. The reality is more likely to be lettings for family celebrations, stagger hen parties with antisocial behavior, drunkenness, loud music, and noise into the small hours with no regard for neighbors. Well-managed sites such as Centre Parks and Roslyston Forestry Centre are well hidden within forests, not next to residential properties and open fields. Additionally, these sites have policies of no single-sex groups, noise curfews, and have resident on-site staff. We fear that board occupants will be left to their own devices in a non-holiday environment, surrounded by residents that don't want them there. Informative instructions such as "please respect the residents" will be of little consequence to those on holiday. Also, the total number of residents in the nearby dwellings is 16. With a full complement of lettings of 32 people, the local residents will be outnumbered 2 to 1. In such a small area, we do not feel this is acceptable. The company proposed to provide off-site management instructs its workers how to safely handle and dispose of needles. A worrying reality as to the type of people that could rent these cabins. The plan proposes to provide a hot tub for each of the 4 log cabins. Hot tubs inevitably create more noise, and with no on-site management, the hot tubs may well be used at unacceptable hours. It should be noted that Center Parks and Rolleston Forestry Centre do not have hot tubs for customers, and with good reason. Hot tubs encourage all-year use of outdoor space whilst consuming alcohol, leading to the increased likelihood of disturbance issues and health and safety risks. With no resident staff to manage such situations, this will create a perfect storm for antisocial behavior disputes and increased health and safety risks. Whilst the developer can retire to his nice quiet residence miles away in Melbourne, for the residents it will be very different. Occupiers of the cabins will be on holiday, and that usually means more boisterous and noisier activities than occur in normal situations. In outdoor play, people often communicate with raised or very loud voices. We calculate that noise levels produced from the site will exceed those recommended and will increase 4-fold, causing conflict and friction between the 2 parties and remove the residents' right to enjoy the peace and amenity of their own gardens. The council's environmental team have stated the hot tubs will require emptying after each occupancy, or at least once a week. This is to reduce the risk of disease and remove any bodily fluids that may be present in the water. The plans do not show how this foul water is to be removed from site. Due to the site being lower than the residential properties, the sewerage and drainage water would have to be pumped up to the drain in Manchester Lane using a sewerage pumping station. Sewerage pumping stations always eventually fail, and raw sewerage will inevitably overflow the station. Any fluid will flow down the slope to the field and onward to the stream and ponds below the site. The plans do not show a pumping station or its location, but a 15 meters radius exclusion zone is required around the pumping station, in which no structures can be sited to enable access to the station for repair or manual emptying. However, the site does not afford such an area without overlapping into adjoining properties. In October this year, the combined sewerage pipe in Manchester Lane was found to be broken and had to be repaired. The addition of 32 people outletting to this pipe will triple the amount of foul water currently flowing each day. Emptying the 4 hot tubs on one day will mean the sewerage pipe in Manchester Lane would need to be able to cope with over 14 times its current flow rate. The lane is dangerous to walk, and is used as a rad run, and is quite busy during commuting hours. The lane has no pavement for almost its entire length, and many sections have only steep banks on either side to try to scramble up if it became necessary to avoid an oncoming vehicle. If 16 residents generate 2 daily movements, then 32 holiday makers would logically generate more. Substantially more when families or groups of friends walk into the village. Use of wheelchairs and pushchairs on the verges would be very problematic. On the steep banks not possible, and on the road a danger. These verges consist of a mixture of uneven grass strips and driveways with obstacles such as drain and utility covers, etc. Residents who are aware of the dangers of the road only reluctantly walk to the village, and at night only if necessary. There have been 4 road traffic accidents on the lane during the last few weeks, causing road closure and lengthy diversions. We fear that strangers who are unaware of the lane's narrow and winding nature, with several blind spots, will be at risk of serious accidents. Security will become an issue to the residents due to itinerant persons occupying cabins at the rear of the property. The risk of persons renting accommodation just over the hedge makes the properties far more open to theft. Finally, the parish council are aware of the strong objections of the residents of Manchester Lane and fully support their objections. It is a pity that the developer, a councillor himself, and some of the other councillors do not take into account the opinions or feelings of the residents. After all, they are supposed to be there to represent us. Please support us by signing our petition. Thank you.